Okay, so the next operating budget that we will prepare is the direct labor budget. Okay, so of course, this is part again of our production because in order for the product to be produced, we need the labor factor to transform it from input to output. Okay, so here, the direct labor shows the total direct labor hours and the direct labor cost needed for the number of units in the production budget. So again, in our production budget, we have there the number of units required to be produced for the period. So in producing that unit, okay, you have to remember that it has an equivalent number of hours in terms of direct labor. And our direct labor is also paid, okay, per hour or depending on the policy also of the company and how they pay the salaries and wages of their employees or workers. So here we will be dealing with the number of hours and the labor costs needed to produce the number of units based on the requirement from our production budget. So as with direct materials, the usage of direct labor also is determined by the technological relationship between the labor and output, meaning to say, as mentioned earlier, if this is the number of output that you require, each unit of production normally has a requirement also of the number of units in terms of labor. So the relationship will change only if a new approach to manufacturing will be introduced, like using machinery without, or it still has the intervention of, human intervention, but probably if the company has other means, okay, to produce that without using labor hours, then this is the only way that we can change it. However, it has normally the relationship between labor and output, okay, in terms of production. So to understand and to know how to prepare the direct labor budget, so we will use this illustration, okay, for ABC company again. So here the company makes the concrete blocks. Each block requires 0.015 direct labor hour. So the direct labor is paid for $14 per direct labor hour. Okay, this is our number of hours and this is our labor cost. Okay, so ABC's budgeted 2.4 units in the first quarter. Again, this is from our production budget. This is the required number of units to be produced for each quarter, if you could still remember. Okay, so therefore, for our requirement, for the first requirement, we will construct a direct labor budget for ABC concrete block for the coming year. We will show the total amounts by the quarter or by quarter and in total for the whole year. Okay, for the second requirement, what if the company requires two types of direct labor? We have the mixers and sharpers. Okay, so each concrete block requires 0.005 hour of mixing time at $10 per direct labor hour. Okay, for in terms of shaping, each concrete block requires 0.01 hour for shaping time, and the direct labor cost is at $16 per hour. So here, based on this information, we will prepare the direct labor budget for each type, okay, of labor. We will show the number of hours and the labor cost for each quarter and in total also for the whole year. Okay, so to answer, okay, for the solution, so we have here the direct labor budget that we prepared. Okay, so here we will show the data for each quarter and for the total, okay, for the whole year. So for our format, first of course, we will need the data from the production budget. That is the units that needs to be produced. Okay, so if you could still remember. And then we will multiply the direct labor per unit. This is for the first requirement. We have one labor or one type of labor in this solution for number one requirement. Okay, so here it requires 0.015 okay, labor hour per unit. So we just multiply it with the number of units to get the direct labor hours needed for each quarter. And then after that, we will just compute or multiply the cost per direct labor hour to get the total direct labor cost. So again here, in terms of direct labor budget, we are considering not only the number of hours or the number of labor hours, but we also incorporate the cost or the labor cost. Okay, so that's why our data here will show the total direct labor cost for each quarter and for the period as a whole. Okay, so this is how you prepare the labor or direct labor budget. So if you could notice, this is quite simple. Okay, we just translate the number of units needed to be produced to the direct labor cost needed to produce those number of units, and then multiply it with its labor cost per hour. Okay, so that's how you prepare the direct labor budget. Okay, so how about for requirement number 2? Okay, for requirement number 2, we have here two types of labor already. We have the mixing and the mixers and shapers. Okay, so we need to create or prepare the direct labor budget for each type of labor. So for this one, this is for the mixers type 1 labor. Okay, so here the same format actually, okay, of that of number 1 requirement. So however, in this case, we will consider the requirement for each labor. So here, if you could still remember, the mixing labor requires 0.005 hours per unit. So that's why we multiply it by this amount, okay, to get the mixing hours needed for each quarter. And then the mixing cost per hour is $10. Okay, so our total mixing labor cost for the first quarter is $120,000, and so on for the next quarters. Okay, this is in the case again of the mixers type 1 labor. So we just follow the same format. Okay, number of units needed to be produced times the number of labor hours needed for 1 unit. Okay, so this is our total hours needed times the cost per hour. Okay, this is our total mixing labor cost. Okay, so next we go to the second type of labor. Type 2 labor, this is now for the shaping labor. So the same format also. Okay, the difference is the labor per unit, labor hour per unit. Okay, in this case, 1 unit of concrete block will require 0.01 shaping labor. Okay, so this is multiplied to the number of units to be produced to get the shaping hours needed for the quarter. And then after that, we just multiply it with its labor cost per hour, that's $16. And then we will get the total shaping labor cost for the period. Okay, so the same also with the second, third, and fourth quarter, and for the total as a whole for the year. And then lastly, for the total direct labor cost, when we say total labor cost, this is already the sum of our mixing labor cost plus the shaping labor cost. This is your total labor cost. All you have to do is to add these two costs. Okay, so in the direct labor uh, budget, the wage rate used is normally the average wage paid the direct laborers that is associated with production. So since it is an average rate, it allows the possibility of differing wage rates paid to individual laborers. Okay, however, in this case, in our illustration for simple illustration purposes for understanding the concept of direct labor budget preparation. So we only have one labor rate, but you have to remember that in the actual field, we have different rates, okay, and wages per hour for the different employees. Okay, so that's why in this case, if there are more than two or there are a lot of workers that has different salaries and wages rates, then normally they will use the average rate paid for the direct laborers. Okay, to simplify the uh, preparation of the direct labor budget. Okay, so if there are different categories of workers with differing skills, as mentioned, and wages, then probably instead of using the average rate, okay, if for example these different categories of workers are relevant and has a major role in the production process, then we should prepare a separate direct labor budgets for each category. Okay, but for example, if the workers is just for one process, they belong into one process and they have different salaries, for example, because of the number of years that they have stayed in the company or other things that that is not related, for example, with their relevance to the production, then we can use the average rate. However, if these categories will be based on the skill levels and of course the wage rate, then or they belong to the different uh, production process. Like in our second example, we have the mixers and the shapers. So we will need to prepare the separate direct labor budgets for each category of workers. Okay, so this is how you prepare your direct labor budget.